Welcome to Eat Well, Travel Better, the Business of Food Travel podcast with Eric Wolf and Ashi Vale, where we help you become a better industry professional by gaining inspiration from some of the world's most successful people in the food and beverage tourism industry. With each episode, we meet these leaders and examine their secrets of success. We reveal the obstacles and challenges they have faced, along with their solutions and triumphs, and give you ideas and inspirations for many of the same business issues that you may be facing as well. And now for today's episode. I'm Eric Wolf, and I'll be your host today for episode 24 of Eat Well, Travel Better, the Business of Food Travel podcast. And joining me today is co-host Ashi Vale. Today we'll be speaking with Rob Holmes. Rob is the founder and chief strategist of GLP Films, an award-winning content marketing agency dedicated to authentic storytelling and ROI-based distribution campaigns for the travel industry. Since founding GLP in 2008, Rob has harnessed the power of storytelling and video to create positive impact for destinations, communities, and stakeholders. Rob has traveled to over 90 countries, directed more than 200 films, and spearheaded a myriad of global content campaigns for top-tier destinations, airlines, hotels, nonprofit organizations, and other brands. Welcome, Rob. I'd like to introduce Rob and how Rob and I came to know each other. Rob and I have known each other really for several years, and we have appeared on the conference circuit together. I remember hearing you speak, Rob, in Washington, D.C. many years ago. And you and I both have the travel bug. We have both been to numerous countries, but let's talk a little bit about how you got started with your company, GLP Films. I guess when you graduated college, you said you got the travel bug and that kind of propelled you to where you are today. Could you explain a little bit about how you got the travel bug and how it led to who Rob is today?
Well, it's great to be with you, Eric. Yeah, for me, travel has been, I think, a part of my DNA since I was a kid. You know, we all think back to people who were influential in our lives. And I would say one of those people was my father. He could tell I was a eager, young, anxious, in a good way, just traveler, adventurer. And so when I got out of college, I traveled for a year around the world, and he was the first person to say, go do it. Go get out of here, go explore the world, do it while you can before you get a house, a mortgage, married, career. And it was the best experience of my life. I traveled for a year around the world through Australia, Southeast Asia, Central Asia, Africa, and was really just transformational for me. It instilled a lot of self-confidence in who I was and when I traveled, and just the general travel experiences that you had, and finding a place to stay, food, water, is it safe, is it clean, communication. I had no way of communicating back then. This is 20 years ago. There was no emails, no cell phone. I would call my mother every Sunday at 10 o'clock Eastern Standard Time in the US to connect with her. And then I would talk to her in a month. So imagine that. So I was totally unplugged and disconnected, and it was that just great experience. People are now paying to unplug. And for this was a year experience for me as a young college graduate, going around the world to countries I've never seen, some of them I've never heard of before. And it was life-changing. And so it really, I think, just gave me a lot of confidence, making me realize the amazing world out there. More importantly, the amazing people, the local people, and also just connecting with other travelers. So powerful when your head is up and you're engaging and talking to people versus your head being down and staring at your cell phone. So very different experience back then, and would love to continue doing it.
What a fantastic story, Rob. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got here and working with GLP Films now? What was that progression like?
Well, when I traveled around the world after college, I was an avid photographer and continued to do freelance photography for many years. Just working in other companies, I would literally take a month off, unpaid, to go shoot. I'd go to China, Mongolia, Cuba, and other places, literally just to continue my passion in photography. And in 2006, when Al Gore's, one of the most successful documentary films of all time, Inconvenient Truth, came out, I saw the power of video. I saw how you can take a slideshow and basically make it very engaging and informative. And that's where my whole passion in video came, and more of a documentary style. I used to live in Seattle, where I'd go to the Seattle International Film Festival and go to a lot of the films by myself just to experience them. And so I started GLP with really merging three of my main interests. One, international travel; two, media, and it started as photography and evolved into video and digital content, and then business. We're definitely, the business side of what GLP does is very important, the strategy that we bring to brands and destinations. So very proud to have built GLP after 11 years of work. I've got the original team from day one, and we're very mission-based, passionate on real, authentic, award-winning storytelling in tourism and adventure travel, cultural travel, food travel especially, and sustainability globally. So it's been a great ride.
Rob, for some of our aspiring food entrepreneurs, can you give us a little detail about how you first started the company and how you went from being a still photographer to storytelling through videos? Did you take classes? Did you do it on your own? Did you apprentice? How did you get started?
That's a great question. I did not go to film school. I went to business school because I was a budding entrepreneur, very passionate. Actually, my undergraduate degree is in wildlife management, so totally separate. I was a science guy that got into the private sector. I looked at government work, I looked at nonprofit work, and I really saw to really not be limited and restricted in the work I wanted to do. I really saw that the private sector, being an entrepreneur, starting your own company was the way and the path that I wanted to pursue. It really was more on the business side in getting into it. And that's really been the strategy that GLP Films has had since the beginning is definitely looking at the strategy. A lot of the business terms you hear, the ROI, the key performance indicators, we've always been a business first, but at the same time, there's a passion that drives us. And I definitely come from the crowd of love what you do every day. I think for any budding entrepreneur, you find your passion. It's true. Find your passion, pursue it, even if it's on a part-time capacity, and grow it over time. Establish your niche and pursue it as much as you can. And over time, hopefully the tide will turn and you'll be able to make your passion work, if it's in food travel, to be your full-time job.
Can you tell us what GLP stands for? Because I knew you back then when your company had a different name, and I think it's really telling about what GLP stands for today.
Yeah, it's interesting, Eric. People like yourself that I've known for about a decade now, it brings back a lot of memories. So GLP stands for Green Living Project. And actually, I came up with the name while driving the Hana Highway on Maui and wanted a name that represented green sustainability. And this was 2007, 2008 when we first started. So the green movement was definitely happening at that time. So great memories of where we came from, but then very quickly after that, social media kicked in. And suddenly having a vague name of Green Living Project, there's two issues that we struggled with. One, our name is too long and too vague. And two, from a social standpoint, it was too long. So we had to shorten it. And so we rebranded pretty soon after that, about 3-4 years after we started, to GLP Films. One, it's shorter, easier to remember, and then having the film component in there, which is really our core. It's only one part of what we do, but it was a nice transformation, and we've been obviously GLP Films ever since. But our roots in green and sustainability are definitely very important to us and still very part of the entire team's mission.
While we're on the topic of green and sustainability, Rob, do you have an industry concern in the food and travel beverage industry right now?
I don't know if I would. I'm more of an optimist than a pessimist. And so I would more look at some of the opportunities. I mean, I think food is such a personal experience. For GLP, we've had an amazing experience in doing great stories with chefs all around the world, to street food, so local food, fusion, the fusion of different backgrounds into food. I don't know if I necessarily have a concern about food. I think it's more just making sure it's real and authentic, because so much of the experience in food travel, as you know, is through the culture that comes through food. And so making sure it isn't commoditized, it doesn't become a commodity, that you still embrace the heritage and history. So I think if I had to say one concern was just making sure that people don't just gloss over the history. I look at it as an opportunity. Any restaurant has the opportunity to showcase the culture, the history, the heritage of the ingredients, and also the final dish. And I think some places just look at, we got to prepare quick food and get it out the door. And people that really have embraced food and food travel, they want to take a step back, look at the ingredients, learn the story, and experience that food bite by bite. So I think it's more just really making sure that people in the food category really embrace it and slow down a little so people can really experience the wonderful side of food and travel.
Rob, while we're on the subject of food and travel, can you share with us a memory that you've had that has stuck with you with regards to food while you were traveling?
I've got a lot of memories, but I think one story that comes to mind is working with a chef based out of New York City, Pierre Thiam. And Pierre is from Senegal, and we spent about 10 days with him in Senegal, and it was so great of an experience. And a lot of travelers, food enthusiasts, but also chefs can know the where the food passion comes from. And for Pierre, the passion for food came from his aunt. In Senegalese culture, it's rare the men just didn't go into the kitchen. And in this case, he snuck into the kitchen and had a wonderful upbringing on food. And it was transformational back when boys just didn't go into the kitchen. And he did, and he embraced it. And now he just has a wonderful story to tell when it comes to making food with family, with your relatives, and the emotional power and the wonderful memories that it has carried on for him. But also, too, going around the streets of Dakar and Senegal and experiencing the local street food that is made on the street side, back at people's homes. It's right there in front of you. You can experience it. You can watch it being made in front of you under the fire with the people. And it's just a great experience. So that experience of seeing where he got his passion of food, where he got his training and education, and then also seeing his love for local food, street food in a country like Senegal, and then bringing all that to Brooklyn, to New York, to the United States was so great. All the connecting the dots on his experience and his personal experience. So just seeing an individual, well-known, great person, chefs, how transformational food has been for them was wonderful.
Rob, you've used the word authenticity a few times, both in the kind of food that you look for, but also in the kind of storytelling that GLP does. And I'd like to hear your definition of authenticity, because it is one of those very, very touchy phrases that people use. It's also overused a lot. Everyone talks about authentic. And in our association, we know that authenticity is the number one profile that food lovers go for when they travel. But among the chef community and also some other consumers, there's a lot of discussion about what's really authentic. And can fusion cuisine, for example, be authentic? So what's authentic to you?
That's a great question, Eric. Words are going to have different definitions and different explanations, different people. That's just humankind. That's just language, and everyone's going to see things differently. For me, authenticity, the first word that comes to mind is it's real. Fusion is fine. All of these different aspects and types of food. It's not about, in my opinion, that. It's just that it's real. So there's amazing fusion food when you combine Japanese and Peruvian food. That's a wonderful mixture of different histories and cultures and the cuisine that comes out of it. For me, authenticity, it's real, it's transparent, it's experiential, it's holistic. You could throw in transformational, but I think experiential is also a very popular buzzword that people use nowadays in the travel industry. People want to experience people. They want to experience cultures, history, heritage, and food. I love the word authenticity. I think it's just another word out there that helps describe the experience in food. People are going to have different opinions, and that's okay. It fosters good conversation and discussion. It's going to mean different things to different people like myself. But I think at the end of the day, authenticity is also about passion, and also each person's going to have their own angle on it. And I think we should all embrace that and accept it and listen to it.
Rob, you had mentioned earlier working on a film for the country of Georgia. Can you share a little bit about how you made an authentic story there? How did you produce an authentic video to showcase Georgia?
Well, working in Georgia was a great experience for us. We spent 10 days crisscrossing the country. And I think when you talk about authenticity there, for us, it was about working with real people. Something that we've done since day one, myself coming from the documentary film world as a photographer and just having a real interest in documentaries. Really, ever since then, when we film, we're working with real people. We're not working with models. We're not working with actors. We want the real deal. And so in Georgia, it was just a wonderful experience in really identifying, and we spend a tremendous amount of work and time in identifying who are the best people to tell the stories in this destination. Georgia is right on the Caspian Sea. It's in Eastern Europe, formerly part of Russia, an amazing history. You know, wine was founded there 8,000 years ago. They have over 500 varieties of wine. So there's a lot of great storylines in the culture and the heritage and the history of this small country of Georgia. But for us, what it came down to was working with real people who could help tell those stories. We actually went in thinking that we were going to have one main person drive the story, and we just saw a whole cast of characters come up that we had already identified. But again, in our world, you know, it's not, GLP is not doing scripted content. This is unscripted. And so we do a tremendous amount of pre-planning before we go. We've identified a whole series of characters, but you don't know until you get there and connect to the people and shake their hand and talk to them and find out their story. And then that's part of the magic of, in my opinion, great storytelling, is weaving all these conversations together into one new story that hasn't been told before. So when we were in Georgia, we did a whole series of films on adventure travel. But then also we did a whole series of films on cultural and food and wine travel. So two different markets. And it was great just to see how it all came together. But that authentic traveler experience was, for our standpoint, based on the real people that we connected with. And then when you are traveling throughout a country like Georgia, your experience is based on the real people that you experience. So we really try to mirror the experience that travelers will have. It's just a really fun opportunity and challenge for us to put it all together.
It sounds fantastic, Rob. We can't wait to watch it. How long did it take to produce a film like that?
Well, we were filming in Georgia for 10 days. So the actual filming was 10 full days, again, crisscrossing the country. But we spent a solid month and a half on the pre-production. So all the planning and coordination. So we went in with a very detailed schedule, and then the editing typically for us takes anywhere from 3 to 6 weeks to deliver the final product. It just depends how many videos we're coming out with. So overall, I think from beginning to end, it can be a 2 to 3 month process, but we only spent about 10 days in the country.
While you were there, did you eat food that really was memorable for you?
While we were in Georgia, we had some of the best food I've ever had. And I think that's one of the perks, I think, when you are filming, is we were working at a restaurant in Tbilisi in downtown. And one of our important characters was a chef. And we worked with her and her restaurant, which was in an old home and out on the patio. And we had to put together a scene with some of her staff and customers, really showing local Georgians eating together and having fun and enjoying the food. And oh boy, you bet, after we're done filming that, we all sat down and had a couple nice glasses of wine and the local food. And we all left with very full bellies and smiles on our face. So we love the food, but more importantly, just the history and the culture behind the food. That's, to me, you know, you see it in the kitchen when we're filming as raw ingredients, and then you see the final product and all the stories that come with it. That to me is so great, because most people just see the final dish being served on a plate. And yes, you can get the history and the culture of it, but in my opinion, I don't think there's anything better than seeing the raw ingredients and why they're put together. And in this case, the chef we worked with was really embracing the old Georgian traditional foods, but historically, a lot of their food influence came from Russia, and a lot of the food tended to be, you know, pretty basic, not in a negative sense, but just, you know, more basic, you know, meat and potatoes. And she's also really embraced, she worked in Brooklyn, New York for many years, for over a decade. And so she was excited to do a little bit of fusion, but also embrace the local food too. So I love the fusion. I think it's great to bring in a modern twist respectfully to the old traditional food. And that was great to experience.
Rob, if you could give a single critical piece of advice to a younger version of you, what would you tell yourself?
If I was to advise a younger version of myself, I would really pursue your passion immediately. I've never regretted any of the jobs I've done because I all see it as a learning experience. I've worked in the nonprofit world. I've worked in the government side. I've worked in the private sector. I went and got a business degree because I was very interested in business and knew I needed those tools in order to start my own company someday. And that I didn't know that was going to be the case, but that's the path I went down, and I felt very confident in the tools I was bringing to the table. So I think for younger folks, or even if I looked at myself years ago, I'm very appreciative of my dad supporting me and pushing me to do what I wanted to do. I didn't have the pressure, even though I was totally financially separate and on my own. There was no financial support from my parents. Every job I've had, every work experience, I've paid for it all myself. But it was just that encouragement to follow your dreams, follow your passions, and it will work out. Yes, getting the little nudge to, you might want to get a little graduate school experience and whatnot. So yes, that was definitely part of it, because ultimately it gave me further tools. But following your passion is something that I just really believe in, because when you are following your passion, you're more committed to it, you're more dedicated to it. When you love something, you do it in such a beautiful way. And there's nothing is better than that, in my opinion. And I will say, I love every aspect of what I do with GLP Films, even though, of course, there are days where, I have to do some things I don't prefer to do, but that's just housekeeping. We all have to do housekeeping. But I think in general, just following your passion and being committed to it, and don't let up. And you're never too old or too young to pursue something. And that's the motto I have, and couldn't be more excited now, 11 years into starting GLP Films and where we're going. That energy comes from loving what I do.
That's exciting to hear, Rob. Is there a legacy that you'd like to leave behind?
The legacy I love is just loving what I do and sharing that with others, and working with good people, smart people that also want to make a difference.
Rob, do you have a quote that you're known for, or maybe a quote that inspires you from someone else?
I don't have a lot of amazing quotes, but I think things that I've probably stuck to, and you would probably agree with this, Eric, just knowing how long we've known each other. But I definitely believe in the work hard, play hard approach. But I'm also, I think, a motto that I stick with, that when I mentor students or interns or younger staff or other folks that are looking at a career change, is patience and persistence. Just embrace the challenges, being patient with those changes, but also be persistent. If you have something good to sell or market or promote, be patient, be respectful to other people. So I think patience and persistence has always been sort of a motto I personally stick behind, because I think it shows, one, the easygoing side of my personality, but also the determination and commitment. And no, this is something that we should talk about, or we should do together, or we should collaborate on. So that persistent side of trying to move things forward. And I think that's an opportunity and a challenge for everyone to find those balances of patience and persistence.
Rob, we asked this question to all of the people that we've interviewed on our podcast. Is there a favorite dish that you have currently?
Well, my favorite dish might actually be a little different than most, but I will have to say, and it's hands down for me, my favorite dish is ice cream. If you want to say just warm-bodied, I'm a fan of colder weather. I live up in Maine, and I really love the winter time and the fall season, or the early spring when it's cool out. I think ice cream just physically resonates with me. But I will say one small story. I traveled to Cuba illegally over 10 years ago and spent a month doing photography, traveling around Cuba by myself, traveling, just hitchhiking. It was an amazing experience of seeing an up and coming old destination with a lot of wonderful history and heritage. But I think the one thing that I did, my splurge every day, was there were little ice cream carts everywhere. And what I loved about it was the story behind the ice cream. These are just entrepreneurs. They get a cart, they make ice cream at home, and they go out and sell it locally. I'm an entrepreneur, and I've always loved entrepreneurship and other people that are doing it. So my experience in Cuba was really my passion and love for ice cream. I think I had probably 5 or so ice cream cones a day while traveling throughout Cuba because it was warm. And anytime I saw an ice cream cart, I ran right up and got another ice cream. So I would have to say ice cream is my favorite global dish.
Now, Rob, I'm going to have to ask you about that because I was also in Cuba. I think it was in 2006 or 7 that I went. I never saw any ice cream carts. Where were they?
Where I saw them the most was on the eastern side near Santiago. Just little carts. And again, it might have been a timing thing, but I just saw little push carts in all over the place. I didn't spend a lot of time I spent a fair amount of time in Havana, but I traveled from the east to the west across, and I don't know, they just popped up. They were different places, but most of the time it was these little carts that people were pushing around. So
my memories of Santiago de Cuba are the rum museum and food poisoning. So
well, should have gone out and found that ice cream cart wherever it was. But I think I'd also say, Eric, on that note, the way I travel is I go the back streets. I go the areas that people don't normally go, just as an individual, when I'm traveling by myself. And I think that's where in my opinion, you really find that unique cuisine, that unique experience, dogs running across the street, kids kicking soccer balls or balls, riding bicycles. And that's where I would see the ice cream carts, is not going down the main thoroughfare. This was like soft serve too. This wasn't packaged ice cream bars. This was soft serve ice cream that I just found in a lot of random pop-up locations. So I wasn't going down the touristy roads per se.
Nice. Well, Rob, I think we need to wrap it up for this episode, but I just want to thank you for sharing some of your stories. You've been to a lot of amazing places. You have a lot of great stories to tell, and it's really been a pleasure knowing you for so long. And thanks for taking the time to share everything you know with our listeners today.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks, Eric, and thanks, Ashi. It was really nice to talk to both of you, and look forward to keeping in touch.
Thank you, Rob.
Thanks for listening today. The Eat Well, Travel Better podcast is brought to you by the World Food Travel Association, the world's leading authority on food and beverage tourism. We empower local communities and businesses with the food and beverage tourism knowledge and tools needed to reach new consumers and gain a competitive edge. Founded in 2003, every year we shepherd a community of almost 100,000 professionals in over 100 countries. Connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. And you can learn more about us, subscribe to our newsletter, and join our family at worldfoodtravel.org. Until next time, eat well and travel better.